Hey there, thanks for being here. It's the first week of April, and that means it's already time for the monthly Cape Coral real estate market update video. I do one of these videos every single month, as you may know, and we're really just going to break down and cover some of the statistics and the facts and the figures that the Cape Coral real estate market has put up in the last month. And so I'm going to be mainly talking about the numbers that came in from March 2025, and we're going to go over some general stats on that, and then I'm going to break things down into individual categories. So we'll talk about the off-water single-family homes. We'll talk about, of course, the Gulf access homes. We're going to talk about condos, and then we'll talk about vacant lots. And I'm going to touch on rentals this month because it is a pretty important part of this real estate market. But if you're not familiar with who I am, my name is Dustin Guthrie. I'm a near 20-year full-time real estate broker. I live and work right here in the city of Cape Coral, Florida, and I do one of these videos every single month, but these are in addition to the weekly videos that I put out on this channel where we just cover some really great informational topics regarding Southwest Florida and Cape Coral. So we might talk about the flood insurance, the latest issues with flood insurance. We might talk about the well and septic system issues that we're having up in the Northeast and the Northwest Cape, or we might just be covering some really interesting and fun real estate. So if you are interested in this area, maybe you're thinking of moving to Cape Coral or moving to Fort Myers or something, or even if you live here now and you just want to stay up on all the latest and greatest information, hit that subscribe button so you can be around for these videos every week. And just try to give you a lot of great information, provide some value for you, just because I figure if I can do that, then odds are when the time does come and you do need a realtor here in Southwest Florida, if you're buying or selling a property, maybe you'll think of me. And of course, my contact information is right there on the screen, but it's also down in the description of this video. And you can call, text, or email me anytime. I would love to hear from you. Love to hear about your real estate goals and tell you how I can help you out with that. So with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the monthly Cape Coral real estate market report. This was kind of a make or break month for us, and I can't wait to share some of these stats that we put up because the market did come in pretty strong this past month, and we'll get into that in a second. But first, we always start off these monthly market report videos with some of the lowest sales of the month in the entire city of Cape Coral, and then we're going to touch on the highest sales of the month in the entire city of Cape Coral in a few different categories. So let's go ahead and get started with the lowest sales of the month of March 2025 in the entire city of Cape Coral, Florida. All right, the lowest sales of the month of March 2025 for all of Cape Coral, Florida. We're going to cover condos, and then we'll look at the lowest single-family home sale of the month, and then we'll look at, just for fun, the lowest, Gulf access home sale of the month, because obviously Gulf access is a very important part of the city of Cape Coral, and we want to make sure we cover that. So let's start off with the lowest condo sale. That was this one over here in the southeast, 403 Southeast 43rd Terrace, unit number 10. It's in a little condo community called Country Club Estates. Just a little one bedroom, one bath, 848 square foot condo. These condos in this area were mostly built in back in the 60s and 70s. So this condo is a little bit older. It was built in 1968, but this was on the market just a little bit over a month, and finally sold right in the middle of March for $81,000. And I can't recall if we've maybe had a couple of months here recently where condo sales, the lowest condo sales, gotten under $100,000, but it's still pretty rare to see one this low at $81,000. Condos are just doing a little bit, it's a little bit rough to be a condo seller right now. We're going to get into that here in a little bit. But this looked, for all intents and purposes, like a decent unit. You know, who knows if that association was maybe having some trouble. The condo fees there were $451 a month, but that's unfortunately pretty typical for condo complexes these days. But $81,000 was the lowest condo sale of the month. This is right off there off of Palm Tree Boulevard by where the old Cape Coral Country Club used to be, and actually that there's a new park is going to be going in there. The city actually bought that land, and we're kind of excited to see what that green space is going to be here in the next few years. So we'll keep an eye on that. But $81,000 for this one bedroom condo, and that was the lowest sale of the month of March in the entire city of Cape Coral. All right, let's talk about the lowest single family home sale. Lowest single family home sale was this one right here in the northeast section of Cape Coral, 652 Northeast 15th Court. This is a smaller property right there close to the corner of Pine Island Road and Del Prado Boulevard. There's a little neighborhood right there where you see some older and often smaller homes in that neighborhood, but this one is at 652 Northeast 15th Street. It was on the market, again, just a little bit over a month. It was listed at $220,000 and sold right at the end of March for $198,000. So the low single-family home sale this month did get underneath $200,000. Typically, when we see these under $200,000, these properties need a fair amount of work, and this one was no exception. And I don't think there was any mold damage or anything like that, but it definitely needed some walls replaced and some sliding doors. There was some shattered glass in there, I can tell, and but needed some work. But nevertheless, $198,000 is pretty good, even in this little bit softer Cape Coral real estate market. $198,000 is a pretty good price for any single-family home these days. So congrats to the buyers and the sellers for this little 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,300 square foot condo. $198,000 cash is what that closed for right at the end of March, and that was the lowest single-family home sale of the month of March. All right, just for fun, let's talk about the lowest golf access home. So if you're in the market for a golf access home and your budget's pretty low, this is pretty much the floor of where those golf access homes, when I say golf access, I'm talking mostly about homes that are on a canal with boating access out to open water to the Gulf of Mexico, or I'm sorry, the Gulf of America. I haven't gotten used to that yet. But nevertheless, this was the lowest golf access home sale of the month of March. Just over on the other side of Santa Barbara, so we're actually technically in the southwest section of Cape Coral, 4324 Southwest First Place, just north of Cape Coral Parkway and west of Santa Barbara Boulevard. This home is a little bit farther from open water. We're probably every bit of an hour, maybe hour and 15 minutes idling through the canals to get out to open water, but it is golf access, and it was listed at $384,000. Was on the market for just about 4 months. $384,000 was the list price. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, built in 1988. Just 1,450 square feet of living area. And all intents and purposes, it looked like a pretty decent home at this price. We don't see too many golf access homes get under $400,000. But this one ended up selling for $350,000, again, right at the end of the month of March. And that's a pretty darn good price for a golf access home these days. I mean, you're talking about maybe just a little bit more than the land value over there. Again, we are a little bit farther from open water, but still a pretty nice neighborhood over there. And for a home that's not too terribly small, 1,450 square feet, looked like it had a new roof in the last couple of years, and some new impact windows and things like that. So looked to be, all intents and purposes, a pretty decent property, and $350,000 is a pretty darn good price for any golf access home these days. So congrats to the buyers on that one and the sellers, and $350,000 was the lowest golf access home that sold in the month of March 2025. All right, let's get to the fun ones. These are the highest sales of the month, and boy, did these high sales really jump up from the last few months. We saw a little bit lower high sales in the last few months, but they definitely jumped up in the month of March, and that's sort of to be expected. But let's take a look at the high sales of the month of March 2025 for Cape Coral, Florida. Okay, so the highest sales of the month of March 2025 for the entire city of Cape Coral. We're going to follow the same pattern here and start out with the highest condo sale of the month. And really the highest condo sale of the month for the last, I would say, at least probably 5 or 6 out of the last 6 or 7 months has been over in Tarpon Point Marina. We've seen some condo sales in there get up over $1 million, and in some cases up over $1.5 million in Tarpon Point Marina. But this month we didn't have very many high dollar condo sales, and the highest sale of the month was under $500,000, and it was just to the west of Tarpon Point Marina over in Cape Harbor. There in the southwest section of Cape Coral. This one at 5602 Cape Harbor Drive, Unit 101. This is actually a townhome. When I say condos, I'm including townhomes and attached villas and things like that. Basically anything that's not a single family home. And we'll keep that same categorization when we get into the actual stats of the market. But this property over there is one of the coach homes or the townhomes, however you want to say it. 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a 1-car garage, just under 1,500 square feet. But this property was listed at $499,000 and sold in just a little over 2 months for $485,000. These units were built in 2003. They're nice units. This one looked to be somewhat updated. It had some nice features in the kitchen, and certainly a decent lanai looking out over the waterfront and all that kind of stuff. But $485,000 is not a very high sale to be the highest sale for a condo in the entire city of Cape Coral for this past month. So pretty shocking, and we're going to get into why the condo market's just a little bit softer these days. It's been tough really for the last 18 or so months, more so than really any other category in the city of Cape Coral. So we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But congrats to the buyers and the sellers on this 3-bedroom, 2-bath townhome there in Cape Harbor. $485,000 was the highest condo and townhome sale of the month of March for the entire city of Cape Coral. Okay, before we get into the highest sale, which is almost always certainly a golf access property, let's do the highest non-golf access property. I've been doing this kind of for maybe the last 6, 7, 8 months, and this is the first one that I've seen that's gotten over $2 million. This property, again, we're over there in Tarpon Estates in the Tarpon Point Marina, so it's a very high-end neighborhood. A lot of golf access around there. That's where the big high-rises are that are usually the high sales of the month for condos. But this property, 6003 Tarpon Estates Boulevard, it is on a little lake there, but it's not on a golf access canal or anything. Big property, was built in 2013, so it's not brand new construction. 3,114 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 3 1/2 baths. This is a really dynamite property. It had 3 separate 1-car garages, 3-car garage basically. Was listed at $2.1 million. It was on the market for a while, 258 days on the market, but it sold pretty darn close to list price. I think they started out at $2.2 million for a list price, and they walked it down to $2.1 million, and finally got $2,050,000 for this non-golf access home. Just a really, really dynamite property with a ton of upgrades in there. And boy, it's just one of the top-notch locations in the entire city of Cape Coral, obviously. And it's nice to see these non-golf access homes finally get up a little bit north of $2 million. So by all means, congratulations to the buyers and the sellers on this beautiful home, as well as their as the listing and selling agents as well. That's a nice sale to have there in Tarpon Estates. $2,050,000 was the highest non-golf access home sale of the month, and that probably would have taken the high sale over the last couple of months. We had some lower months where the highest sales didn't get over $2 million, but we got up over $2 million this time. In fact, there were 8 properties in the month of March that sold over $2 million, and the highest one was this one. You may be familiar with this one if you're a longtime subscriber to my channel, but it's 5636 DeSoto Court there in the southeast section of Cape Coral, in that really nice top-notch area called the Yacht Club neighborhood. This was a brand new construction home. I had done a pretty lengthy video on this home, maybe 8 months ago. It's been on the market a long time, 474 days. I think they started out at $6.5 million when I did the video on it. They've been walking it down ever since, and they were listed at $4.5 million. Never been lived in, and it sold right in the middle of March for $3.99 million, $3,999,000. This was just a really top-notch, gorgeous property. Did sell for cash. It looks like they got a $20,000 credit on it, maybe for some things that I think when I was there was a couple panels of glass that had broken or something like that, so maybe they got some credits for that. But this was a big property, 5 bedrooms, 6 baths, 4.5 baths, so 6 total bathrooms, 5,473 square feet of living area inside. It had an absolutely gorgeous open pool deck, and really just a great outdoor living area there on a top-notch golf access canal. But this was a pretty special property, and really happy to see it close for almost $4 million. 5636 DeSoto Court was the high golf access home sale of the month of March 2025 in Cape Coral, $3.999 million. And again, that was one of 8 homes that ended up over top of $2 million. This was the only one I think that got up over $3 million. But 8 homes over $2 million is still a pretty darn good sign for our broader real estate market, and it really underscores what a crucial month March was for us. We had seen some lower sale numbers, we had seen some lower sale volumes in January and February, and that's typical for this time of year. So it was really crucial to see some heavier hitters come in here in March and see some better numbers on the closings for Cape Coral, and we definitely saw it. And let's get into that right now. So let's go ahead and get into some general stats on the real estate market, and then we'll start breaking these down by different categories. So again, we'll start breaking them down: single family homes, off water, Gulf access homes, condos, vacant lots, rentals. We'll cover all that. Make sure you stick around to the end, because I'm also going to give you some advice if maybe you're a buyer in this Cape Coral real estate market, as well as some advice if maybe you're a seller in the Cape Coral real estate market. So make sure you stick around for that. I'll summarize everything at the end, and then we'll wrap up for this month. But let's go ahead and get into the general statistics of the month of March 2025 for all of Cape Coral, Florida. All right, so we're going to get into some general statistics of the Cape Coral real estate market. I think I mentioned it on my last report, but this was kind of a make or break month for us. March was. Typically speaking, in any given market, January and February are a little bit, as far as the heavier season, January and February are a little bit on the lower side. But we were really seeing some stagnant numbers. It really took it was kind of slow coming into 2025, the first couple of months, and so we were really looking to see whether or not we were in a little bit more of trouble as a Cape Coral real estate market, or if we were going to see some better numbers as we got into March, April, and May. And March really came through. We put some good numbers up in March, and that was really good to see. And I think a lot of folks would breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief that knowing that we are still selling some pretty decent number of properties here in 2025, in spite of the inventory issues that we're going to talk about here in a second. But let's go ahead and get into some of the stats. This first graph I'm going to show you, it's about a little over 2 years of the monthly number of sales. So I'm going to be talking about the entire Cape Coral real estate residential market. So it's everything from single family homes, on water, off water, condos, townhomes, basically anything that's not vacant land or multifamily like a duplex or something like that. But take a look at this graph. Here's the 2-year graph for the number of total sales in any given month. And we sold 586 properties in the month of March. And you can see why I say it was kind of a make or break month for us. If you look at the last 2 seasons, the last 2 months of March, March always takes a big jump, and so that's why I think it was going to be pretty telling if March of 2025 came in significantly lower. I think then that would be cause for a little bit more concern. But we jumped up a fair amount. In February we only sold 370 properties, so to go from 370 to 586 is a pretty darn good sign, and that means we'll probably see some higher numbers as we get into April and May as well. We're not quite doing as good as we were last year, at least on the volume, at least in the numbers side. We're about 7% slower than really both the last 2 years, because 2024 was almost identical to 2023, at least in the number of sales that we'd seen. We had the first 3 months of 2023, we'd seen 1,360 total residential sales. In 2024, we're just shy of that, 1,353 sales in the first 3 months of 2024. And so far, in the first 3 months of 2025, we're just about 7% lower than that. It's 1,258 residential sales so far in the first 3 months of the year. But again, I think we're going to see some stronger numbers as we get into April and May. I don't know if we'll get up over 586, but it'll probably stick pretty close to that. I took a look at the last 30-day pendings, the pendings that went, the properties that went pending in the last 30 days, and there's 580 of those. So most of those will inevitably turn into sales as we get into April and maybe May. But we're just a little bit slower in terms of the activity, but 586 sales was a good sign. But let's talk about the median price of those 586 sales. And again, we're talking about general statistics, so this is all of the residential Cape Coral real estate market. It's everything from that $3.999 million beautiful home there on DeSoto that we just looked at, all the way down to that $81,000 low condo sale of the month. So you take everything that sold and you put it right down the middle, and you get this graph right here. Here's the little bit over 2-year graph. We're going back to January of 2023 on this graph, just so you can see the last two heavier seasons that we'd gone through. But our median price last month was $370,155. That was down from February's number. It was $389,000 in February, but I think that was a little bit of an errant month. We kind of ticked up there a little bit, but you can see it's really been noticeable more so in the last 12 months than the last 24. You know, the entire year of 2023 going into 2024, pricing was overall fairly flat. But we've kind of taken a noticeable tick down here in the last 12 or 18 or so months. And if you weigh these out, if you look at it last March, in March of 2024, the median price was just shy of $390,000. $389,900 was the median price in March 2024. And if you go all the way back to March of 2023, that median price was $398,000. So we're definitely softening on our pricing. Represents, just by these hard numbers, about a 5% reduction in the last 12 months and about a 7% reduction in the last 24 months. And, you know, again, I talk about this every month, but that doesn't take into consideration, you know, maybe a little bit higher inflation numbers that we had seen in 2022, 23, 24. So you factor those in, we've had a little bit stronger market correction than it actually looks like on these graphs. But nevertheless, we have softened in pricing about 5% on paper in the last 12 months. And the reason for that is this next graph. This is the total market inventory. And I mentioned this last month, but these numbers don't represent exactly the number of active properties that are on the market right now. This is just any listing that was active is counted towards these numbers. So any listing that had an active status at any point during the month of March goes into these numbers. So our actual number of properties that are on the market at this very moment is a little bit less than that, and I'll get into that. But nevertheless, we had a big ramp up coming in, big one. Our inventory jumped in a big way from December to January, more so than even I expected. We always have a tick up every year, and you saw that in the previous year in 2024, but was not banking on it being as high as it was. It really took a steep jump from December to January. I think we had a lot of people take properties off the market throughout the year last year. That's why you saw in 2024 the inventory number was going down as we got into the later months of summer on this graph. And then I think all at once, a lot of these folks put their properties back on the market for the busier season, and that's why our actives jumped up the way they did. But the good news is we're lower this month. We're lower in March than we were in February. February's number was 4,944 total actives at any given point in the month of February. We came down to 4,829 properties that were active at some point during the month of March. So we're down just about 2.3%. Our inventory number came down 2.3% in 1 month, which is a good start. We still got a long way to go, because if you look back 12 months ago in March of 2024, there was only 4,262 of these properties on the market. That represents about an increase in 1 year of 13.3%. So we went down and then we came straight back up. But we did take a little dip. If you look back 2 years ago, when we had almost artificially low numbers of inventory on the market, although actually, as we were getting into the spring season of 2023, our inventory numbers were not too bad. We would like to get back to those numbers, put it that way. But in March of 2023, there was 2,896 of these properties on the market. So that represents 66.7% increase in available inventory in just 2 years. And but it looks like hopefully this will be a trend moving forward. It looks like we've hit the crest in February, and now we're starting to come down. So the properties on the market are either getting pulled off, or we're having some stronger number of sales. So hopefully that's adding to the reduction in overall inventory. But we got a lot of work to do, and it's going to be a buyer's market for the foreseeable future. Now I mentioned 4,829 properties. That's just active at any point during the month of March. It was on the market as an active status at some point during March. That doesn't mean that there are 4,829 residential properties available on the market right now. In fact, as of this morning, I checked it, and the total actives right now were at 3,951. So we're almost $1,000 less than this number. So some of those properties had gone off for one reason or another. They expired, they were sold, they went pending. The listings were terminated, they pulled off the market. But 3,951 properties actively available right now in the city of Cape Coral for the month of March. But let's go ahead and break down these numbers by some different categories, and we always start off with the most prevalent type of category in our Cape Coral real estate market, and that is the non-waterfront single-family home. So let's get into those. All right, so let's jump into off-water, non-waterfront single-family homes. So this is basically any home in any area of the city that's not on a body of water, not on a Gulf access canal, not on a freshwater canal, not on a lake or anything like that. Again, this is the largest segment of the market. So there was those 580 some sales that we had last month. Of those, 364 were in this category. So this is definitely a good chunk of our real estate market. And let's take a look at the number of sales for these off-water single-family homes, again, going back to January 2023. And you can see we take a big jump in the at the beginning of the year, as most categories. We see a lot more of these sales in the first 6 months of the year, and then it kind of trails off as we get into the later summer months and fall months and going into the holidays when people just generally aren't shopping for properties. But we sold 364 of these off-water single-family homes in the month of March. That's up from February's number of 226. So again, big jump, which was good to see. We really needed to see that big jump because these this January and February numbers were almost the lowest on this chart, pretty much. I think January of 2024 was the only month that was lower than those 2 months. So 364 was good to see. If you look back 12 months ago in March of 2024, that number was 384. If you look back 2 years ago in January of 2023, 365 of these sales were sold in March of 2023. So again, 2023 and 2024 were virtually identical, at least in the terms of the activity. We're down just roughly 7% in just the terms of the activity, not the price. We'll get into the price here in a second, but just the number of sales were down about 7%. Just about a little bit over 50 sales less in 2025 so far in the first 3 months than we saw in the previous 2 years. So let's talk about the median price. And again, this covers everything that's a single-family home not on a body of water. So this is pool homes and non-pool homes, all of that good stuff. Median price last month in March 2025, $347,700. That was down. Again, we had a little bit of a spike in February. $365,000 was the median price in February. So we're down just a little bit from that. I think if you kind of averaged all of these out, you'd probably be closer to that $350,000 mark versus the $365,000. So March's number was $347,700. If you go back 12 months ago, again, March 2024, that number was $370,000. And interestingly enough, if you go back 2 years ago, the March 2023 number was $369,990. So the March 2023 number was identical to March 2024, because again, throughout that year of 2023, pricing didn't really fluctuate that much. It was very, very flat. And then here in the last 12 months, definitely 12 months and maybe 18 months, we've seen a little bit more of a noticeable trend in the downward direction. So we're down about 6% in this category from this time last year. If you broke this down, I think there's some differences in the subtypes of this category. So if you broke this down to just resales, and in this situation, I classified a resale as anything that was built in 2020 or older. That median price for those resales was $340,000. And if you did bring that chart up, which I don't have in front of me right now, but that would have been an 8% reduction in 1 year. So the resale market is definitely doing a little bit worse than the new construction market. The new construction market, if you look at those graphs, that would be any property built 2022 or newer, because again, we're going back to 2023. But the prices have only come down about 1 or 2% on these new construction properties in the last 12 months. Now, that doesn't take into consideration some of these incentives that these builders are offering. So you might have in a situation where a builder is giving $15,000 towards a buyer's closing costs or crediting things like that. And that doesn't make it into the actual recorded sale price. I think it's probably a little bit more than that 1 to 2%. The reductions, if you kind of counted all of those credits and things like that, I think it would be a little bit, it's probably 4, maybe 5%, but it's definitely noticeably down more in the resale market versus the new construction market. But just for kicks, let's actually look at the homes with pools versus the homes without. Here's the chart for off-water homes with pools. So again, going back to January 2023, the median price for an off-water pool home last month was $402,000. And you can see it's kind of noticeably different. You know, when everybody's budgets kind of get tighter, the first thing that goes out the windows are luxury items. And I would consider pools to be somewhat of a luxury item. So people are not placing as high of an emphasis on getting those pools as they were back in 2023, certainly. And if you look at this, you know, $402,000, that represents about an 8.5% reduction for the median price for an off-water pool home 12 months ago. It was $439,500. If you go back 2 years to March of 2023, that number was $460,000. So we're almost $60,000 less on average for a pool home today versus 2 years ago. And that represents about a 12.6% reduction. I just thought this was interesting. And, you know, when we were doing these market reports a year, maybe 18 months ago, certainly a year ago, I think the average difference for an off-water pool home versus a non-pool home was about $100,000. And I remember recommending at the time that if you were a seller, if you had a property that didn't have a pool and you were looking to do something that would give you a little bit of return on investment in terms of improvements to a property, you know, putting a $70,000 pool on your house was getting you a little bit better return. You're getting on average about $100,000 more for that property, that pool home, versus a non-pool home. It's not the case anymore because a non-pool home median price right now is $320,000. So that $100,000 difference has been reduced to about $82,000, or about $18,000 less difference nowadays versus again 12 or 18 months ago. So, you know, I think pool construction costs have come down a little bit in the last 12 months, so it's a little bit cheaper to put a pool in these days. The demand is not, you know, what it was 12 or 24 months ago. So maybe you can get away with putting a $60,000, $65,000 pool package in, whereas before it was maybe $70,000, $75,000, $80,000. So, but, you know, based on just the general statistics, you're on average getting about $82,000 more for a pool home versus a non-pool home these days. All right, let's look at the overall inventory. So we're going back to the total category, any off-water single-family home available on the market. And again, this doesn't represent the total number of actives on the market at this very moment. These numbers on this chart are just any listing that had a status of active at some point during that month. So this 2-year chart, we had, again, we've come down a little bit in the month of March from where we were in February, which is a really good sign. But there was still 2,603 properties that were active on the market at some point in the month of March. That's down from February's number of 2,711. So we're making a little progress. We got a long way to go, though. We're still up 9.2% from where we were 12 months ago. 12 months ago, there was only 2,384 of these properties that were active on the market. And if you go back certainly 2 years ago in March of 2023, we've seen a 51% increase in overall active inventory for non-waterfront single-family homes. So we got some work to do. We've made it's a good sign that we've come down a little bit from February to March. Hopefully we don't tick back up. I don't see any reason why we would, so I would anticipate that February is probably the peak, and now we're coming down, and at least for the foreseeable future, that number should be a little bit lower each month as we get into the later spring months and into the summer. But it's a pretty solid chunk of inventory we took off the market from February to March. It represents about a 4% reduction just in 1 month. So that's good to see. But anyway, that's off-water single-family homes. Let's jump over to everybody's favorite category, and that's the Gulf access home. So again, any single-family home that's on either the river or a Gulf access canal, access out to the Gulf of America from your canal, so you can have a boat behind your yard. That's this category of property. Let's jump into the Gulf access homes. Okay, everybody loves Gulf access homes. We've got over 450 miles of canals in Cape Coral, as you may know, and majority of them are Gulf access canals with access out to the Gulf of America. So let's follow the same pattern. We'll start off with the number of sales. This is a category that's very heavily weighted for the spring months versus the summer months. We see a lot more of the seasonal residents and retirees and things like that, who are often a little bit more active in the first and second quarter of the year versus the third and fourth quarter. So we see a lot more sales in March, April, May, June than we do certainly in the later months of the summer. So let's take a look at the 2-year graph, or going back to January 2023. Sales ticked up. We almost doubled what we did in February. We had 95 Gulf access homes that sold in the month of March. That's up from February's number of 56, and it's certainly up from January's number, which is the lowest month on this chart, January of 2025. That's why I say, we saw 41 sales in January 2025 and then just 56 in February. That's, again, why I'm saying it was kind of a make or break month for us, March was, in terms of whether or not we were going to have a little more of a significantly slower season than the last couple of years or not. So it's good to see it almost double, up to 95 sales this past month. If we look back at 12 months, pretty accurate over where we were in the last couple of months. We only had 98 sales in March of 2024, so we just had 5 less than we did March of last year. And if you look back 2 years, back into March of 2023, it was probably a little bit slower back then, just because, again, we had Hurricane Ian September just a few months before, and everybody was kind of sorting themselves out after that. But there were 93 sales back in March of 2023. So basically on par this year with where we were at the last couple of years. If you look at total, the first 3 months of the year, this year versus the last 2 years. In the first 3 months of 2023, we sold 222 properties, Gulf access homes. The first 3 months of 2024, there was 232 properties sold. And in 2025, we are down to just 192. Again, January and February of this year were slower than the first 2 months of this year were slower than the first 2 months of the last couple of years. So for that reason, our activity's down about 17% on Gulf access homes from this time last year, and we're about a 13.5% lower than we were 2 years ago. But again, we're coming into the main part of season for this type of property, and I looked at the properties that had gone pending here recently, and there's 99 current pending Gulf access homes out there right now. So the vast majority of those will turn into sales either in April or possibly May. So we'll keep an eye on this, but we're doing pretty good for Gulf access homes, at least in the terms of the number of sales that we're seeing this past month. Let's look at the median price. We don't have as big of a sample size when we're talking about 41 or 58 or even 93 or 95, 98 properties per month. So this median price swings up and down quite a bit, and you'll notice this on this 2-year chart. Median price for March of 2025 was $750,000. That's up just very slightly from February's number of $735,000. But again, that's not a hard and fast number when you're talking about sample sizes that are not very big. So this kind of swings up and down quite a bit. If you look back just in, November, the median price was all the way down at $650,000. And then in December, it went up to $805,000. So 750 is probably a fairly good benchmark based on you've kind of averaged all of these out. But if you look at it 12 months ago, March of 2024, the median Gulf access home price was $730,000. $177,500. If you just took those numbers, that mean we would be down 3.5% in terms of the sale prices, the median sale prices. And if you look back 2 years ago, it was 800,000 in March of 2023, and that would put us down about 6.25%, 6.25%. My guess is if you wanted to kind of average all of these out, we're probably, again, looking in the last 18 months, we're probably looking at a drop in about 5 or 6% in the last 18 months, maybe a little bit less than that in the last 12 months. Meaning, you know, if you just took the same golf access property 18 months ago, it would probably be worth about 5 or 6% more than it's worth today. And again, that is mostly due to these inventory issues. But you know, we were at, in February of last year, the median price for this category type was $852,500. So it comes up and down a little bit, but I think 750 is probably a fairly good average. And I think if you were to kind of take all those together and kind of even them out a little bit, you'd probably come up with about a 5 or 6% price reduction on average in the last year and a half. But let's look at the inventory, because the reason prices have softened is because of the inventory issues. And here you go, 2 years of golf access home inventory. And again, we really took a big jump from December to January, but really November, December, and January and February, we had consistent big jumps each month. And you know, we did do a little bit better in March than we did in February. It's not as noticeable in this category as it has been in the other categories. So we had 1,070 properties that were active at some point during the month of March. And that is just compared to 1,075 active properties at any given point during the month of February. So we're only 5 properties less. If you looked at the actives on the market at this very moment, when I pulled these stats, there was 948 golf access homes on the market. So what's that? We're about 122 or so less properties than these numbers actually say on these charts, because again, just any property that had an active status in the month of March is counted towards these numbers. So some of them went off the market, some of them sold, et cetera, et cetera. But if you look at this inventory sheet and take it back to 12 months, there was only 895 golf access homes that were active in March of 2024. That represents almost a 20% increase in inventory year over year, about 19.6%. You went back to of March of 2023, there was only 583 of these properties on the market in the month of March 2023. That represents an 83.5% increase in overall inventory from 2 years ago. And so obviously it's a little bit more exacerbated in this category than it was in the off-water single-family homes. We're seeing a lot more inventory on the market now than we did certainly 12 months ago and definitely 24 months ago. So that's why we're seeing some softening on the pricing, and we'll keep an eye on that. It took a little bit of a dip in inventory from February to March. We need to do some more work on that. So hopefully when April's number comes out next month, that will be a solid chunk less than that 1070. But we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll keep an eye on those prices too. Still a lot of really good golf access homes selling. Again, there was 8 properties over $2 million that sold last month. So definitely the higher end is rocking and rolling right now, and we'll kind of continue to watch that as we get into April and May and June, and we finish out our heavy season for golf access homes. But that's the numbers on golf access homes. Let's touch base on condos. Condos are rough. It's rough to be a condo seller right now, and there's some reasons for that, and we'll kind of get into that next. But let's take a look at condos and townhomes in Cape Coral, Florida. Okay, condos and townhomes have been off to a rough start this year. You know, condos and townhomes, maybe even more so than golf access homes, are really strong in the spring months versus all of the other months of the year. So summer and fall are, generally speaking, very, very slow for condo sales. As you can imagine, this category is favored by seasonal residents, folks that are down here during those winter and spring months when the weather is gorgeous like it is right now, and they're buying condos. So we see a lot more sales in the March, April, May than we do in the summer months. But take a look at this 2-year graph on the number of sales. Look, we're down in terms of activity from where we had been the last couple of years. The last 2 years, the highest months of the year had been March. We did take a big step up from February to March of this year, but we only sold 56 condos this past month, and that's compared to March of 2024's number of 73 and March of 2023's number of 75. So we're well short of that, almost 20 condos short, which is a big number when you're only talking about 56% or 56 condos. We're what's that, roughly 35 or so percent, 33, 35%. So we're seeing less activity in the condo market. If you look at the first 3 months of the year in 2023, we had sold 147 condos in the first 3 months. In 2024, we sold 143 condos in the first 3 months. And this year so far, we've only sold 128. So we're down 10.5% in terms of the activity from last year and 13% from 2023's number. In 2023, that was even in spite of coming off again Hurricane Ian a few months before that. So we're just a little bit slow on the condo front right now, and more so than even the other categories. And I think there's several reasons for that. One of the main reason is demand is down just simply because condo fees are up. The combination of insurance rates going up in the last couple of years, coupled with things like the laws that were put into place a few years ago, or a couple years ago is when they went active, but a few years ago is when the tragedy happened over in Surfside, Florida, where that condo collapsed, high-rise condo collapsed because they hadn't been inspecting that building for engineering issues, for structural issues, and they hadn't been making repairs that probably needed to be repaired years and years ago, and as a result, we saw that collapse of that building, and as a result, the state government stepped in and they put some laws in place to force condo buildings, any condo building that's 3 stories and above has to have, when the building hits 30 years, they have to have an engineering survey done for any structural issues, and then they have to have them every 10 years after that. And those by themselves are expensive, but they're also required by law now to set aside a certain amount of reserves to fix any issues that those engineering surveys bring to light when they do happen. So you're adding on more required costs to those folks every month or every quarter in those condo fees. And as a result, the affordability has just gone down. The demand has gone down for these properties. And simultaneously, we have more forced sellers because a lot of these condos and townhomes are favored by folks that are maybe retirement age and maybe a little more apt to be on fixed income. And when you put extra burden in that monthly condo fee, it brings that affordability down for those folks. And it's not like they can just ask for a raise at their job or something like that. They're getting Social Security or a pension or something like that, and they are starting to not be able to afford these properties. So demand has gone down. And as a result, we get this graph here, which is the median price over the course of the last 2 years. We hit a low point on this chart in March of 2025, this past month, $213,000. $213,500 was the median price for condos and townhomes this past month. That's down from February's number, which was $230,000. But take a look at this. I mean, yeah, we bounce up and down a little bit, but it's pretty obvious that we have been in a downward trajectory on pricing for the last 2 years. If you go back to March of 2024, the median price was $250,000 for condos and townhomes. And if you go back 2 years ago, in March of 2023, it was all the way up at $295,000. So this means at $213,500, we're down 27.6% from 2 years ago and 14.6% from just 12 months ago. And obviously, the sample sizes are not large when you're talking about just 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 properties per month. So this bounces around quite a bit. But even if you kind of average these numbers out, I still think, even generously, I would say we're closer to about a 10% reduction in the last 12 months in pricing, and probably closer to 18% in the last 2 years. And that's before you even take into consideration things like inflation. So, $213,500, just to put it in reference for you, that's the lowest the monthly median price has been since October of 2021. October of 2021, it dipped below 198, or it dipped to 198,250. So we're basically have wiped out any of the gains that we had made since the third or fourth quarter of 2021, 4 years ago. So condos are down, condos are tough, condos are an opportunity right now if you are somebody who's willing to look at something, even if you're like a first-time home buyer, something looking to get into the real estate market to get yourself some place where you can start building some equity and building some wealth. Condos are a really good place to start because the affordability is definitely down. We saw those condos. I mean, they're getting down all the way to $81,000. Even if you've got a $400 or $500 a month HOA fee or a condo fee, the affordability is definitely there with condos. So I think there's definitely some opportunity to be had, again, because we're seeing some more discounts on these condos versus a lot of these other property categories. So if you are looking to get into the market, you might take a look at condos because there's some great values out there right now. But that's the story on condos and townhomes right now. Let's finish up with vacant lots, vacant residential lots. We'll talk about rentals after that, and then we'll wrap up with some advice to sellers and advice to buyers, and we'll finish out this month's report. Okay, vacant lots in the city of Cape Coral. These are vacant residential lots, and we're only going to talk about the off-water lots. There's really not enough waterfront lots that transfer in any given month. I'll touch on the numbers just briefly, but I'm not going to get into the charts for golf access or waterfront lots. So these are just vacant residential single-family lots that are not on any body of water. And activity for these lots have been going down in the last 2 years. Take a look at the 2-year graph here. This is the number of sales in each month. We only had 73 vacant residential lots sell last month in March of 2025. That's down from March of 2024's number, where there was 116 back then. And you go back 2 years ago, there was 190 sales in March of 2023. So we're down 61.6% in 2 years and about 37% just in the last 12 months. I think the majority of the reason that we're seeing a reduction in the number of sales has a lot to do with the fact that construction has slowed way down. As we talked about previously, the resales, the prices on resales have become far more attractive than the cost to build a new construction home. We're seeing a lot fewer of the investors building new construction spec homes. We're seeing a lot fewer of the production builders like D.R. Horton and Lennar. They're definitely not kicking out as much inventory, kicking out a bunch of new product as they had been certainly 12 months ago and definitely 24 months ago. And as a result, those builders and the folks that were looking to build their own home have gone way down. So the demand for lots has obviously gone down considerably, about 37% in the last 12 months. But you know what? It hasn't really affected the pricing. Take a look at this 2-year price chart. This thing's really flat, and if anything, it may have gone up a little bit. And the last 3 months, the median price, and again, the sample size is not terribly small. So you're talking 73, maybe 86, 93 the last 3 months. That's the number of sales. So sample size is fairly big, and the median price for those last 3 months have been $45,000 on the button. We had one kind of weird month there in December where it went up to 50. As I recall, that month there was a few more of the southeast and southwest lots with central utilities that sold. Typically speaking, this $45,000 number represents mostly sales that occurred in the northeast and the northwest, where there's still a lot more vacant residential lots available up there, and those are areas that are not on well, or that are on well and septic systems. When you do build homes up there, they're not on central water and sewer. The city is pushing that up through that area. But still, the sale prices for those vacant lots when they don't have central water and sewer available to them are considerably less than the sale prices for homes in the southeast, or vacant lots in the southeast and the southwest when they do have that central water and sewer there. In fact, the sale prices down there are almost double what they are in the northeast and the northwest. So the home $45,000 is closer to what you're going to pay for a vacant residential lot in the northeast or the northwest, and probably closer to $90,000+ for the southeast and the southwest. But nevertheless, 45,000. It's been very, very flat. I mean, 12 months ago, the number was 43,000. So we're up $2,000 from where we were in March of 2024. And way back in March of 2023, it was 41,500. So again, I don't think that's enough to say that prices have increased. Maybe they have very, very slightly, but I would say overall we've been very, very flat over the last 2 years. And in spite of the slowdown in the number of sales, we're seeing the sale prices be roughly the same where they were a couple of years ago. So let's look at the inventory, because the inventory here is almost the inverse of what it's been in the other residential categories. We've seen, whether it's Gulf access homes, off-water homes, condos, everything, the inventory has been going up over the last 2 years. Really, the inventory has been going down for these vacant lots ever since, January, February of 2023. It's been somewhat on the downcline. It's kind of flattened off in the last year or so, and maybe ticked up a little bit in the last few months. I don't know if that's a trend or not. We'll keep an eye on that. But nevertheless, there was 1,275 properties on the market active at some point during March of 2025. That's down from 1,287 in February. But you look back 12 months ago, and it's pretty even. 12 months ago, there was 1,245 of these properties. And in March of 2023, there were 1,745 properties on the market. So we're down quite a bit from 2 years ago. And again, these are just lots that had an active status at some point during that month. As of this morning, there is only 1,151 off-water vacant residential lots currently active out there, single-family home lots. Now the flip side of this is if you actually looked at the months of inventory, because the demand has been going down for the last 2 years, the months of inventory that are sitting on the market, even though there's fewer on the market now than there were 2 years ago, the absorption rate is lower. And what I mean by that is obviously they're not selling as many of these lots in any given month now versus the numbers that they were putting up 2 years ago. So the actual months of inventory, in other words, if you went at this same pace without putting any more new properties on the market, how many months would it take for you to absorb everything that's out there? And if you looked at that chart is going up. I didn't print that chart out, so I'm not going to show it to you. But nevertheless, it's properties are staying on the market longer, and there's more available inventory compared to the absorption rate than there was certainly 24 months ago, even though there was more properties on the market. I think we'll keep an eye on this. I don't think those prices are going to go anywhere anytime soon. We don't have a lot of forced sellers in the lot market, so these lots are easy to just leave out there on the market for 2-3 years at a time in some cases, and we're not seeing the reductions to warrant these prices going down anytime soon. So I expect it'll probably continue to be flat. If you want to buy a lot right now in the Northeast or the Northwest, you're going to pay $40,000 to $45,000 for the most part. Maybe a little bit less than that, depending on where it's at. If you want to buy a lot in the Southeast or the Southwest, you're probably starting at 80, 85 and going up from there. And I don't think that's going to be going down anytime soon, but we'll keep an eye on it. But that's vacant residential lots, single-family home lots. Let's finish up with the rental market real quick, and then we'll get into the advice for buyers and sellers. Okay, rental properties. We didn't cover this last month just because I think I was going a little long-winded and I didn't want to add to the already long video. This video is obviously already pretty long at this point, but nevertheless, we're already here and I got the chart, so let's talk about rental properties and specifically talking about rental amounts, folks that are investors that own rental homes, the amounts that they are getting. And right now, let's take a look at the inventory first, because we had a shortage of workforce housing going back 2, 3, 4, certainly after the pandemic in 2020. The talk of the town was the lack of workforce housing. In other words, our economy was ripping pretty good back then, but the folks that make that economy hum, the folks that are waiting tables, bartending, the folks that are working construction jobs, the folks that are in the big service industries that we have around here, or the medical industries, they were getting priced out of the rental market because we had too few properties. And as a result, those rental prices were getting exorbitantly high, and folks were not being able to afford it. So as a result, there's a lot of incentives for the private sector to come in here and create new construction homes for the purposes of rentals, as well as these big apartment complexes that we're seeing come to fruition right now. Some of these are 200, 300, 400 door complexes. And as a result, the inventory levels have gone up considerably from what they were 2 years ago. So take a look at this 2-year graph. This is just the number of rentals that are available out there on our local MLS. And what these don't include are some of those apartment complexes and things like that that don't advertise on our MLS system. So the numbers are even higher than these appear to be. But nevertheless, same situation. These are any listing that had an active status in the month of March added up to 871. That is the high point on this chart, I believe. 871 was the highest it's been. We got up to 878 in June of last year, and then it came back down and went back up. But again, we're much higher than that because these are not including these apartments. These are basically anything that's advertised on the MLS. So anyway, we're up inventory-wise from this time last year. We only had 757 available rentals, so we're up about 15% in 12 months. And if you go back to March of 2023, we only had 509. That's when we were coming out of that workforce housing shortage. Only had 509 available, so we're up 71% from where we were 2 years ago. And again, this is any property that had an active status in any given month. But there's, as of this morning, there are 768 available rentals on the market right now. And the median price, that takes into consideration everything. So that's everything from a lowly 1-bedroom condo all the way up to a really super nice golf access home that's renting for, upwards of $5,000, $6,000 a month or something like that. But let's take a look at the median prices, because thankfully for the folks that are out there renting, you're seeing those prices soften over the last 2 years as that inventory has climbed up. So the median rental price last month in March of 2025 was $1,995. We dipped below $2,000. That's up just $95 from February's number. But nevertheless, the broader trend is in a downward trajectory. And if you looked at March of 2024, the median rental price was $2,193. So just under $2,200, meaning we're down almost $200 from where the average property was renting for a year ago. Represents about 9% reduction in the last 12 months. And if you go back to 2023, in March of 2023, the median rental price back in March of 23 was $2,395. It was just under $2,400. And so that same average property now is about $400 a month less than it was 2 years ago. It represents about a 17% decrease. So we're getting some affordability back in rentals, but unfortunately for the folks that own rental properties, that are investors, you're definitely not seeing the returns that you were seeing 2 years ago as the shortage of inventory has given way to a glut of inventory with these new apartment buildings and everything else that's on the market for these renters. So good news for renters, not so good news for landlords. But that takes care of the rental market. And that's all the categories we're going to cover right now. So let's go ahead and get into advice for buyers in this Cape Coral real estate market. This is my advice if you're a buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market right now. And then we'll talk about advice if you're a seller in the Cape Coral real estate market right now, which is a little bit tougher situation. And then I'll wrap up with kind of a summary of what's going on in the market. And we'll finish this month's up and beyond to next week's video. So here we go. Buyers advice if you're maybe a buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market. Okay, if you're a buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market as we sit right now here in March 2025, what is my advice to you, and what do you need to be paying attention to and looking out for? Well, it continues to be a very strong buyer's market. It's really been a great time this entire year, really the last 12 months or so for buyers right now. The interest rates haven't been too great, so if you're financing a home, it's a little bit more expensive these days. But actually, just here in this last week, interest rates came down a little bit, and I think the average 30-year sits somewhere around 6.6%, which is the best they've been in a long time. I can't recall the last time it's gotten under that 6.5 mark. I think they'll continue to go down as we get into later parts of this year, so be paying attention to that. But overall, we just have a lot of inventory out there. Yeah, it came down a little bit from February to March, but we're still roughly at a 15-year high in terms of the number of properties that are available for sale right now. So go out there and take your pick, take your time, and really pit these sellers against one another. I think a lot of these sellers are getting a little bit more motivated to sell these properties. For a long time, we had high inventory, for instance, last year, but you didn't see our pricing softening as much as it has the last 12 months. And I think that's mainly because the sellers out there were not terribly motivated. We still don't have a lot of forced sellers, and by forced sellers, I simply mean, you know, folks that are forced into selling right now. We have a lot of folks that are sitting on low 2 and 3% mortgage rates that own property out here that maybe bought them a couple of years ago or refinanced a year ago, and they're not terribly. A lot of them are not terribly motivated to leave those lower payments somewhere if they can't get their number. So we've got a lot of overpriced properties still on the market, but more and more of them are coming down, getting to where they need to be to sell. We're still selling a lot of properties, but there's just way too much inventory out there. So take your time as a buyer, and like I said, pit sellers off of one another. If you can pick 2 and 3 properties that you really would feel fine about, you know, whether you got one or the other, then, you know, you make one offer, and if that seller doesn't meet your offer, you go to the next one and you say, hey, here it is, take it or leave it, more or less. Now, I'm not suggesting that you come in there and you're not going to be able to whack 20 or 30% off these prices. If the properties are priced right, they still are selling relatively close to list price, but you should really base whether or not you're getting a good deal on that price and what, you know, how it compares to other properties that are selling right now. Versus how much of a discount you're getting off of the list price. Because you can get 20% off the list price, but if that property's listed at 40% over market value, you're really not getting that great of a deal. It feels like it maybe, but you're not getting that great of a deal. So just pay attention to the price that you're actually getting the property at versus how much you can get off of that list price. Because the sellers that are pricing their properties right are still selling them relatively quickly. It's just oftentimes taking them, you know, 2 and 3 and 4 price reductions to get in that sweet spot where they need to be. But enjoy your time while you have it. I think for the remainder of this year, I would imagine that it would continue to be a buyer's market. You're going to see less and less inventory as we continue in this trend of going downwards. It happens like this every year, but I think inventory will still be relatively high for the rest of the year, and interest rates will probably continue to fall. So, you know, the flip side of that is that will bring the demand up a little bit, but it also brings that affordability up as well. So enjoy your time as a buyer. If I can help you with anything, if you are looking for something here anywhere in Southwest Florida, it doesn't have to be Cape Coral, but get a hold of me. My contact information is right there. I would love to hear about your situation and a little bit about what you're maybe looking for, and I can get you pointed in the right direction. Would love to help you out. So call, text, email me. Would love to hear from you, but that's my advice to buyers right now is just enjoy this time. It's a really solid buyer's market, and you can get a really good deal out there. I think you can negotiate strong. Again, the key is to pick those 2 or 3 properties, multiple properties, and then pit the sellers off of one another. I think you're going to have the best results. I know for the clients that I have right now that are buying, that's the strategy we've been pretty much employing, and it's produced some really solid results here recently. So if you are a buyer, get a hold of me. Would love to talk with you, but that's my advice to buyers right now here in March 2025 in Cape Coral, Florida. Okay, so if you're a seller in the Cape Coral real estate market as it sits right now in March 2025, what is my advice to you? What do you need to be looking out for? What do you need to be concerning yourselves with? Well, first of all, if you don't have to be a seller right now, you should probably just get out, get out of the market. If you can afford to hold on for another year, probably 2 years, I think you'll be in a better position here in a couple of years, provided we don't go into some extended economic downturn, a big recession or anything. It doesn't seem like that's on the horizon, although we've had some volatility here recently with the tariffs and everything like that. But nevertheless, if you are a seller that needs to sell right now, you know, you need to frankly just price your property right. I mean, there's nothing that's going going to help more than getting that property priced right, because we still see some strong demand. We're not on pace for the sort of demand that we saw last year in 2023 especially, but we are still fairly strong. I mean, this is not a market where, you know, it's really, really hard to find buyers, especially right now in these stronger winter and spring months. So, you know, get your property priced right, but just also be aware that you're going to be competing against a ton of other properties out there. I know for the listings that I have right now, one of the things we are seeing, especially the ones that I would consider to be priced right, we're seeing a lot of buyer fatigue. In other words, we're seeing there's so many other properties out there that are on the market right now that we're seeing a ton of showings on our properties. But these buyers are just kind of overwhelmed with the number of properties that are out there in any given price range. And so, yeah, they're seeing ours, but they're seeing 20 different other ones as well. And, you know, by the time they see that 20th one, maybe they've forgotten about how nice ours is. So there is some buyer fatigue out there. So you need to do whatever you can to make sure your property is standing out. Get great curb appeal. I say it every single month on this video, but, you know, the drive up to your house and the first 5 seconds or so that you walk through that front door, everything needs to pop. It needs to look good, it smell good, everything needs to be perfect, because those buyers are oftentimes going to decide in that first drive up, in those first 5 seconds of walking through the front door, whether or not they want to buy your property. It's easy to completely shut down if you walk in there and it smells like a wet dog, and you know, the countertops are dirty and things like that. So make sure your property looks good. Make sure your property is priced right, because you know, I put 3 listings under contract just in this last week or so. So I know that properties are selling, properties are moving, but you just got to be smart. You got to price them right. You got to make sure they're looking really, really good. And don't be afraid to offer some incentives and things like that, you know, whether it's closing cost credits or something towards an FHA or a VA loan, or whether it's something like an agent bonus. Even in today's market, you know, an agent bonus for a buyer's agent goes a long, long way. And we've seen some of the production builders offering a little bit more buyer's agent compensation, and it's turning out, you know, the buyers are bringing or the buyer's agents are bringing their buyers along to those properties and allowing them to see those listings, and it's really paying dividends for a lot of different folks. So there's some creative things to do there. If you need help selling, if you are considering selling your property, or maybe you're on the market now and your listing agreement's coming to expiration or something like that, I would invite you to reach out to me and let me know a little bit about your property and your situation, and I'll tell you maybe about how to go about doing the best you can in a really tough market right now. So call, text, or email me. My contact information's right there. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to you know, help you out as best I can. And if we need to get it on the market, we'll make sure we get it priced right. We make sure it's marketed appropriately, so we can try to stand out against this really, really large number of other active properties out there. But if you are a seller, love to hear from you. Call, text, email me anytime. All right, let's just summarize the Cape Coral real estate market as it stands here in March of 2025. Inventory continues to be the word of the day, so to speak. We're heading in the right direction, and that's a good thing for sellers right now. It's a good thing for our overall market, because we hit that 15-year high basically in February, and now we're coming back down again. And the trend is that we're going to continue to see that inventory kind of slowly subside. So I believe that the worst is behind us on the inventory front. The flip side of that is we have a pretty strong buyer demand right now, but we're not seeing the numbers that we saw last year. So we're having, you know, I thought this year had the potential to really be a stronger year for the number of buyers in the market versus last year, and we're not seeing that materialize, at least not yet. And I don't see, from the pendings and everything, I don't see any reason to believe that that's going to shoot up here in the waning months of our main spring season. So for the time being, we're heading in the right direction on inventory, but it's going to continue to be the situation for a while. It'll continue to be a buyer's market for the foreseeable future. So if you are a buyer, you're sitting pretty good, and you're sitting even a little bit better right now because interest rates appear to be coming down. I think I was telling the buyers in the buyer advice that I think interest rates are about 6.6% for a regular conventional 30-year. 10-year treasury appears to be going down, so those rates might get a little bit better. I don't think they're going to dip under 6% anytime soon, but they're certainly better than 7.5%, where we were sitting about this time last year. So if you are a buyer, you're sitting really pretty, and you're going to be able to negotiate yourself a pretty good deal. Right now, if you're a seller, you just gotta, get out in front of this inventory issue and make your property stand out as best you can in all different ways, whether it's curb appeal or walking into that property in the first 5 minutes and making sure everything looks really, really sharp, or it's just pricing your property right. You got to price it in front of that to stand out against all of that other inventory out there. So in terms of where we're heading as a market, there's tons. It's no shortage of clickbaity doom and gloom YouTube videos out there that many of you have probably seen, saying, "Oh, Florida's crashing." Let me tell you just some hard data on that. In 2022, the migration to Florida was 314,000 people. We added, as a state, 314,000 people in 1 year. I see all these YouTube videos saying, mass exodus out of Florida, mass exodus out of Florida. Well, the fact of the matter is, in 2024, we added 64,000 people to the state of Florida. Now, that's not 314,000, but we still added 64,000. That's net migration. So of all the people that left and all the people that came in, the difference is Florida added 64,000 people to the citizenry here in our Sunshine State. So don't be fooled. We're still the land of sunshine. We're still the land of waterfront and great winters down here. And there's still a lot of people that want to be here in Florida, and especially right here in Cape Coral and Southwest Florida. I think we have one of the best bangs for your buck right now in terms of the value of the type of property that you're able to have and just the quality of the location. I don't think any place around here touches that balance that you're able to get here for that dollar amount. So people are going to continue to want to come to the state of Florida and to Cape Coral, and we'll see. The market's going to correct. It's already corrected quite a bit already. I think it's going to correct maybe a little bit more, but it's not going to crash. The biggest difference between now and 2008 is there was a ton of forced sellers in 2008. And what I mean by that is the majority of the people that were building and buying houses back then were investors, and they were way, way over leveraged because you were able to get 3, 4, 5 additional mortgages on investment properties, and those folks had no intention of doing anything with them other than reselling them on speculation. So when the market fell out, they're caught with this property. They can't sell it for what they have into it, and they just walked away, and the banks took them back. And then the banks aren't in the business of holding real estate, so the banks put them on the market, and they were forced sellers in that situation. So they had to outcompete each other with all of the other inventory out there, and that's why the prices went down so quickly and so massively back in 2008. We don't have that now. We have sellers that are out there that aren't necessarily forced sellers. They're oftentimes, they either bought it several years ago when the prices were much lower than they are even right now, or maybe they bought it in 2022 or something like that and got a 2%, 2.5%, 3% interest rate or something, and they're sitting on that really low monthly payment, and they're not really motivated to get off, to leave that payment behind unless they're getting their number. So we've got a ton of overpriced listings on the market right now, and we're just not seeing a lot of motivated sellers to get those properties really super reduced, and then start competing with each other for the fewer buyers that are out there. So we may have a little bit of correction to go. My thoughts are it'll probably be, depending on what the inventory does, if we can get this inventory under control, I think it'll slow down and flatten out a little bit. But I definitely think it's going to be a buyer's market for the remainder of this year, and we'll see what happens next year. If we go into a recession or something like that, some long-term unforeseen financial crisis, then all bets are off. But we're not crashing. We're correcting. Every metric that I look at every single day says that this is a normal correction. We got way too hot way too fast as a real estate market here as we got out of the pandemic, and that's why all those folks came rushing down here. But we're still Florida, and we still got the sunshine, and we still got the waterfront, and we still got the great winters down here, and that's not going anywhere anytime soon. So if folks still want to be here, still a good time to be a Floridian, and whether you're a buyer or seller, long term, I think Florida and Southwest Florida is going to be just fine. So continue to tune in to these reports every single week. I'll give you the hard facts and the hard statistics, and if something really looks like it's on the horizon, I'll be here to tell you. I'll be in this business for hopefully another 20 years. I've already been here 20. I'll be here for another 20 years. So whether you buy with me today or you buy in 5 years from now, I'm happy to point you in the right direction, because ultimately that's how I succeed in this business. So thank you for being here. I hope this was useful to you. I hope you got some good information out of this. If you did, do me a favor and hit the like button right here, because that really helps me out, helps this channel out. And again, if you're not subscribed to the channel, which I think 80 or 90% of you are not subscribed to this channel, but you're repeat watchers of my videos, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It also just helps this channel out, helps me get a little bit more exposure. So beyond that, thank you so much for being here. I do appreciate your time. I know these are longer videos, but again, I hope you got something out of it. But make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you on the next video here in just a few days.
Like and subscribe. Just kidding.